What if the person you are about to marry is actually a predator, hunting your inheritance? To save my daughter from a premeditated property scam, I have assumed her identity under the wedding veil. We are moments away from stopping a life-altering mistake and exposing a criminal in front of everyone he tried to deceive. It all started 3 nights ago when a flash drive was slipped under my front door in a plain manila envelope, containing a digital paper trail so ruthless it turned my blood to ice. I spent hours sitting in the dark of my study, staring at the blue light of my laptop as file after file unlocked a sickening timeline of engineered romance and targeted financial slaughter. The spreadsheets were meticulously organized, detailing 3 previous marriages across 2 state lines where every single wife had walked away completely ruined, stripped of her ancestral real estate, and buried in sudden corporate debt. Julian had not met my daughter Clara by chance at that art gallery 6 months ago. He had spent nearly a year profiling her background, tracking her trust fund schedules, and studying the deed structure of our family estate, which had been passed down through 4 generations of women. The PDF attachments included leaked internal emails between Julian and an offshore shell company, mapping out the exact liquidate and transfer pipeline for our coastal property, complete with appraisal valuations that matched our family land down to the square inch. My breath caught in my throat when I opened a folder labeled Closing Parameters and found a drafted addendum to the prenuptial agreement, cleverly disguised as a routine trust updates rider. Nestled inside 20 pages of dense legalese was a single lethal clause stipulating that upon solemnization of the marriage, full management authority over Clara's real estate holdings would immediately and irrevocably transfer to a joint asset firm controlled entirely by Julian. When I confronted my personal attorney at 2 a.m, his voice trembled over the speakerphone as he verified that signing the register alongside this contract would bypass standard probate protections and strip Clara of her property before the reception even started. I tried calling Clara, but Julian had already begun isolating her, convincing her to turn off her phone for a pre-wedding digital detox at the secluded coastal estate. Sitting there as the sun began to break over the horizon, I realized that calling the local police with unverified digital leaks would only tip Julian off, allowing him to stall, flee, or coerce Clara into signing elsewhere. The realization hit me like a physical blow as I calculated the remaining hours on the dashboard clock of my car while speeding toward the venue. We had less than 4 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The sheer calculation behind his moves was terrifying. He had systematically replaced our trusted family security staff with his own hired contractors, ensuring that no outside interference could interrupt the proceedings. Clara was currently trapped in the upstairs suite, surrounded by Julian's sisters who were acting as her bridesmaids, completely oblivious to the fact that her whole future was about to be liquidated into an untraceable Cayman account. Every minute that ticked by felt like a hammer striking my chest, because I knew that if Julian got her signature on that parchment, the legal battle to undo it would take years and bleed our family dry while he disappeared with the proceeds. The realization of how close we were to total ruin made me sick to my stomach, but panic quickly gave way to a cold, razor-sharp focus as I realized standard legal interventions were too slow to stop this train. Standing in the dimly lit study with the printed evidence spread across my desk, I knew I had to make a choice that sounded entirely insane. I had to step into the crosshairs myself. I could not risk Clara breaking down under the pressure of a direct confrontation in front of Julian's legal team, nor could I risk him sensing danger and forcing her into a quiet courthouse signing before we could legally freeze his access. The time for conventional warnings had passed, and as the clock ticked down to 3 hours before the vows, I called my most trusted friend, a professional theatrical makeup artist, and told her to bring every prosthetic and color-matching kit she owned to the venue's rear entrance. Transforming my 52-year-old face and neck into the likeness of my 24-year-old daughter required 2 painstaking hours of high-density silicone application, subtle contouring, and precise skin tone blending. Sitting motionless under the harsh ring light in a hidden storage room beneath the venue, I watched in the mirror as layers of specialized airbrush foundation dissolved decades of age lines, while subtle facial prosthetics lifted my cheekbones and reshaped my jawline to mimic Clara's precise bone structure. My friend worked with frantic precision, layering liquid latex over my neck and applying custom micropigmentation to match Clara's fair skin tone, constantly checking reference photos under various lighting conditions. The physical discomfort was intense as the tight adhesive pulled at my skin, but the sheer adrenaline coursing through my veins rendered the discomfort entirely irrelevant compared to the threat looming upstairs. The final piece of the illusion was a heavy, custom-designed double-layered Belgian lace veil that fell all the way to my waist, obscuring any microscopic imperfections in the prosthetics under thick, intricate floral embroidery. To pull off the illusion beyond mere appearance, we wired a microscopic, skin-colored bone conduction earpiece directly behind my earlobe, hidden beneath a heavy cascade of pinned hair extensions that mirrored Clara's bridal style. Upstairs, in a locked bathroom, Clara was sitting with the encrypted radio unit, her voice trembling as she rehearsed the real-time audio synchronization we would need if anyone spoke to me before the vows. Whenever someone addressed me, Clara would listen through a hidden directional microphone pinned to my bodice and immediately whisper the precise response, vocal inflection, and personal inside jokes into my ear, allowing me to mouth or vocalize the words with her exact cadence and pitch. We spent 20 frantic minutes testing the latency, ensuring that her whispered prompts reached my ear in less than a fraction of a second so there would be no unnatural pauses in my speech. Clara's voice shook as she reminded me of Julian's habit of kissing her left cheek twice whenever he greeted her, a detail that could instantly expose us if I reacted incorrectly. The hardest part was not the voice or the face, but mastering the distinct physical presence of a woman half my age who had trained as a professional ballet dancer for 15 years. I spent 30 excruciating minutes practicing Clara's posture in the cramped storage room, forcing myself to abandon my natural, hurried stride for her fluid, upright gait and slightly turned-out foot placement. Every movement had to be calculated, from the gentle tilt of the head when listening to the specific way she held her breath when nervous, all while wearing a heavy 50-pound silk ball gown that restricted my movement. My heart hammered against my ribs when we heard heavy footsteps outside the storage room door, signaling that the groom's party was beginning their sweep of the lower levels. I took one last deep breath beneath the suffocation of the lace, checked the hidden audio link one final time, and stepped out into the hallway, fully aware that a single slip in my step would expose the entire operation. Infiltrating the main hall required absolute precision, utilizing a pre-planned fire alarm trouble signal on the south wing to draw Julian's private security guards away from the bridal suite staging corridor. As the guards rushed toward the basement control panels to investigate the simulated short circuit, I slipped through the service kitchen doors, my heavy silk skirts rustling softly against the stainless steel counters. The hallway was cold and smelled of stale floral arrangements, but I moved with forced elegance, keeping my head bowed just enough to let the heavy lace drape naturally around my shoulders. Clara's voice came through the earpiece, steadying my nerves as she confirmed via the venue's security camera feed that the hallway was clear for the next 30 seconds. I reached the bridal suite door, turned the brass handle with gloved fingers, and stepped inside just as the security team's walkie-talkies echoed down the far corridor. I was barely inside the suite when the door behind me swung open, and Julian's lead corporate attorney, a sharp-eyed man named Vance, stepped into the room holding a leather-bound folio. My chest seized as Vance cleared his throat, his eyes narrowing as he scanned my silhouette draped in the heavy bridal gown and veil. Clara whispered urgently into my ear, telling me that Vance was exceptionally perceptive and that I needed to keep my hands folded over the bouquet to hide the slight difference in hand size. Vance stepped closer, stating that Julian wanted the final financial riders signed now before the procession started to avoid any awkward delays during the formal photo session later. I kept my head down and let Clara whisper the response through my earpiece, repeating her exact words in a soft, muffled tone that attributed my silence to overwhelming wedding jitters and tears ruining my makeup. Vance hovered near the doorway for 5 agonizing seconds, his gaze lingering on the thick lace covering my face before he finally nodded and set the leather folio on the glass vanity table. Once he turned his back and exited the room to notify Julian, I immediately pulled 4 miniature high-definition pinhole cameras out of the hollowed-out base of my bridal bouquet. Moving with swift efficiency, I concealed the wireless lenses inside the floral arch at the head of the altar, behind the register signing desk, and within the lapel pin of the officiant's jacket that was hanging in the side vestibule. These cameras were synced directly to a secure cloud server and a live broadcast stream controlled by my legal team, ensuring that every word, document placement, and facial expression during the trap would be recorded in uncompressed resolution. The tension in the room was suffocating as the church organ began its deep, reverberating prelude from the sanctuary above, signaling that the guests were taking their seats. Standing behind the heavy oak doors of the sanctuary as the brass handles began to turn, I could feel the cold sweat trickling down the back of my neck under the thick layers of silicone and lace. The church was packed with over 200 guests, including high-profile investors, media contacts, and Julian's wealthy associates whom he had invited to witness his grand acquisition. Clara's voice in my ear was a calm anchor amidst the roaring pulse in my temples, reminding me to keep my chin up and my steps measured as the organ transitioned into the traditional processional march. Through the dark mesh of the veil, I could see Julian standing at the end of the aisle in his tailor-made tuxedo, smiling with the supreme, arrogant confidence of a man who believed he was about to secure a multi-million-dollar fortune for the price of a golden ring. Every step I took down that long velvet runner felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss, but with every footfall my fear transformed into an icy, unshakable determination to destroy him. The climax arrived at the exact moment the officiant requested the signing of the legal registry and the accompanying property addendum on the ornamental table beside the altar. Julian stepped forward with a gilded pen, his hand steady and his grin wide, gesturing for me to sign my name on the line that would execute the immediate transfer of the family estate. I took the pen from his hand, held it over the paper for 3 agonizing seconds, and then intentionally pressed the tip down so hard that the steel nib snapped in half, splattering dark black ink across the signature line of his fraudulent contract. Julian's smile instantly vanished, replaced by a flash of raw, controlled fury as he leaned in close and whispered through gritted teeth that I needed to stop playing games and sign the secondary copy immediately. That was my cue. I reached up with both hands, unlocked the hidden hairpins at the crown of my head, and threw the heavy Belgian lace veil back over my shoulders to reveal my face under the bright altar spotlights. The collective gasp that echoed through the sanctuary was deafening as Julian stumbled backward, his face draining of all color as he stared at his mother-in-law standing before him in his bride's gown. Before he could speak or signal his security team, the massive dual projector screens on either side of the altar flickered to life, displaying the decrypted files, the offshore banking records, and the recorded phone calls detailing his entire history of asset theft. My lead attorney walked calmly down the center aisle, holding a stack of federal injunctions, flanked by 3 uniformed police officers who immediately blocked the side exits of the venue. The live broadcast link had already gone out to every financial institution connected to Julian's shell companies, freezing his accounts in real time while the gathered guests watched the evidence of his crimes play out on the screens in horrifying detail. Julian opened his mouth to scream at his legal team, but Vance was already backing away, realizing that every document he had brought into the building was now part of a grand jury evidence file. I stepped forward, towering over Julian as he sank into one of the altar chairs and handed him the broken pen along with the certified police report detailing his past identity fraud charges in 3 other states. The physical evidence was undeniable, backed by the high-definition footage captured from the bouquet cameras that showed Vance trying to force the prenuptial signature in the bridal suite just minutes prior. Members of the audience were standing on their pews, filming the entire collapse on their phones as Julian's private security guards quietly discarded their earpieces and walked out the rear doors to avoid federal conspiracy charges. Clara walked out from the side vestry dressed in a crisp dark suit, completely unharmed, and stood beside me as the officers placed Julian in handcuffs right in front of the floral arch he had purchased with stolen money. The look of utter devastation and powerless rage on his face as the steel cuffs clicked around his wrists was a sight I knew would sustain my family for the rest of our lives. By sunset, the venue had been completely cleared of Julian's associates, and the legal team had finalized the filings to place our entire family estate into an irrevocable, multi-generational trust that no future spouse or third party could ever touch. Sitting in the quiet room after the police cars had pulled away, Clara and I sat side by side, peeling off the remaining prosthetic pieces as the reality of our narrow escape finally settled over us. The emotional toll of the past 72 hours was heavy, but the bond between us had been forged into something unbreakable through the shared crucible of protecting our legacy. The financial predators of the world rely on silence, shame, and the speed of their deception, but they never calculate the sheer terrifying distance a mother will go when her child's future is on the line. Julian will spend the next 2 decades in a federal facility reflecting on his calculations, while our family land remains exactly where it belongs, safe, whole, and untouched.